So this is recording on my computer. This is for for us to download it because it's really difficult to take it off of YouTube or whatever. So we have our own personal version, and then we'll have a live version that goes out as well. Okay, copying my stream URL. Live on custom live streaming service. There it is. Bam. There's this one. Copy, stream key. Bam. And then we're going to go live on YouTube. And LinkedIn. Whoops. Okay. And boom. And all right. Are y'all ready to roll?
I think so.
Denisha, how are you doing?
There I am.
Oh, nice. Did you set up on your computer?
Good morning. I'm back.
Denisha, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Did you get it set up on your computer?
Yes.
Cool. Try saying something one more time.
Something one more time.
Perfect. All right. We can hear you. Fantastic. All righty. Let's go live. All righty. Good morning, everybody. We are officially live. I'm excited to have our very first pre-symposium panel. Essentially, what our pre-symposium panel does is it helps us get excited and ramp up for our executive symposium on March 30th, 2023, being held at Accenture. Topic is how to develop employees and retain outstanding performers during a recession. Today, we've got incredible pre-symposium panelists with us here today. We've got Elizabeth Davis, we've got Kris Torres, we've got Denisha Jenkins, and we're here to talk about what we've found to be effective for developing our employees during times of recession uncertainty, as well as what is a popular belief about leadership that you disagree with. And really what we're trying to do here is inspire incredible dialogue and discussion around things that maybe we've thought about or maybe haven't thought about from a leadership perspective, but that we should be thinking about. And so for this is for anyone who's a leader or wants to be a leader, or envisions themselves as a leader that essentially wants to get a new perspective, a fresh light as to what they can do to lead during these very interesting times that we're in. So before we kick it off, I'd love to have each one of our panelists introduce themselves. Elizabeth, do you mind kicking us off with an introduction?
Yeah, sure. My name is Elizabeth Davis. I'm a Vice President of Strategic Alliances and Partnerships at Prophix Software, which is based in Mississauga, Canada. Been in the technology space for over 10 years. Before that, I was an accountant for a Fortune 500 company for about 10 years. I'm a mom of 3 teenage boys who are 13, 15, and 18, based in the North Texas area. Deeply passionate about coaching and mentoring emerging leaders.
Very cool. Awesome. Kris, how about you?
Yeah, so Kris Torres, I work for Accenture. I've been doing IT consulting or working in the IT field for over 20 years now. Also a mom based in North Texas. So I have 2 boys, a 4 and an 8-year-old. And I really love building high functioning, diverse teams to just create awesomeness for our clients.
Very cool. And Denisha, how about you?
Yeah, so I'm the founder of Kardia Advisory Group. We are based here in Austin, Texas. I've been in the systems consulting and people space for 15 years. And so at my organization, within my organizations, we help organizations revitalize their identity to ensure that they are resilient culturally. And we do that through inclusive leadership.
Very cool. Awesome. So let's kick it off in no particular order in terms of who responds, but I'd be curious to know, we're in these interesting times of recession uncertainty. I think we can, I don't know if we can officially economically say we're in a recession now, but they're very fascinating times that we're in. Very different than where we were exactly 1 year ago today. And one thing that you'll I kind of observed was that a lot of times, especially in the tech space, you'll see a lot of companies raising salaries or essentially giving high bonuses as a way to retain people. But now with things changing up quite frequently, quite frequently, there's a lot of change in terms of how perhaps we should be looking at leadership and developing our people during these interesting times. So I'd love to ask each of you, what have you found to be effective for developing teams, developing employees during these interesting times? Kris,
I guess I can. Yeah, I was like, I guess I can start. So, you know, we have at Accenture, we have a ton of just training tools, right? We've got a lot of online platforms that you can do self-based training. You can kind of choose your journey. Doesn't really matter what you're wanting to learn. We've got a place to do that. What I found interesting though during these times is it's not necessarily about that. It's really about creating that sense of community. And I think through, you know, we'll go back to even 2020 when the pandemic started, we all isolated, right? We all went to our homes and we social distanced for, you know, quote unquote 2 weeks. And a lot of the thread of community really got difficult. And so even though we had all these training opportunities available and we had all of these growth opportunities and we had these great projects for people to work on, that thread of community got really hard, and you had to start being really intentional about how you built that community. So what I have found, you know, and where I really had to grow as a leader too, was how do you build a sense of community when your people aren't together and you can't, it's hard to recreate the magic of being together virtually when you're not good at it and you're new to it and trying to figure that out. So so we've started to build in those moments to help magic happen. So every week we have a water cooler 30 minutes, and it's come and go to try and recreate virtually just the opportunity for people to get together and talk about whatever's on their mind. You know, I do a weekly office hours where I open my door for 30 minutes and, you know, it's kind of, it moves around a little bit sometimes, but, you know, every other week, 1 week it's in person, the next week it's virtual. Every morning our team kicks off the morning together. There's about 65 of us, you know, in the central time zone ish. I'm going to say ish because we got some mountain time zoners and some people from California that join in, but roughly, you know, and we just, it's kind of a, what's interesting to you today, what's going on maybe in the world of Accenture. And my favorite aspect is anytime we have a birthday, we sing on Teams happy birthday to whoever's having their birthday that day. And it is both as awful as that sounds and amazing at the same time to have the entire, you know, kind of group sing and celebrate somebody's just being here. And you know, and then we get to celebrate all the accolades and the things that they're growing in. So when they get a new certification, or when they achieved a milestone, or when they're working on a, you know, a project, and they achieve something there, we get to celebrate that together. So so that retention part really has more to do not with those opportunities, but with the community that we're creating around that growth to help people feel supported and welcome and included.
I like that. That's cool. Denisha and Elizabeth, I'd love to learn your thoughts on this, but you know, there's one thing that you brought up that at the very beginning, you mentioned like you've had a lot of opportunities for training for your people to take advantage of. And I see this a lot. Like, I think a lot of companies have online courses or trainings that they can take advantage of, but sometimes I'll observe that there's not necessarily that they're non-self-starters, they just maybe don't even know where to start when it comes to some of those trainings. So I think we as companies assume like, if we give it to them, they will come.
Yeah.
What has your experience been with people actually taking advantage of those resources? And this is, by the way, this is for, you know, Kris, Denisha, and Elizabeth.
Well, I'll speak up to this because we're doing some of the similar things, and it's a matter of like we have our annual, our semi-annual, and then I break those down. I call them like process goals. Like, what goals do you have to do to hit your big goals, right? Like, because goals that help us all drive together, like we're doing with the Ames Insights. And so it's helping my teams identify those specific courses that align with their goals, and making sure that we make time on like a weekly basis to knock out, like if it's an 8-hour course, I'm like, okay, 2 hours a week. And if this week you don't do it, next week you have to do 4 hours, right? Like making sure you carve out that time to set aside to hit those goals. It's also really, I think, meaningful as a leader that I have those times set aside on my calendar as well. I do like calendar blocking to make sure that I'm setting aside time to hit my goals. So it's something that we do together. And then like you were talking about, Kris, you're talking about water cooler. I have those like beginning of the week, end of the week check-ins, like, hey, what are your goals for this week? So it could be like partially that. It could be I'm moving this objective. I run sales teams. So like we're progressing on this opportunity, so on and so forth. The end of the week, if you didn't, you're like held accountable by your team. Like, did you hit your goals? If not, what got in the way? And then I can take that as a leader and help remove those boulders. Or sometimes that's not feasible, right? I'll let them understand why I can't remove those boulders, but at least I have visibility to what's stopping my team from moving forward on things. But that accountability cross team, I find, is really meaningful.
And I guess I'll give from a different, smaller structure of an organization. So we're smaller, but we work with larger organizations, small to medium. So for internally for our team, we've gone through a couple different tools. And one of the things we've realized is that some tools just, that seem good for like our project manager does not work for everyone. And we've had to just tweak things instead of just like pushing through. So for our team, Slack seems to be the fave. And we are big on not using words, if that makes sense. So we use a lot of memes and GIFs and Bitmojis and emojis. So we use a lot of those things. We also use audio, like messaging a lot on our team of just like, oh, I just thought of this thing. And we just recently started going through rebranding. So we've been doing these culture work exercises at every large team meeting. And it's been very helpful to have us sit and talk about our values and how that's resonating with you that week, or how you're demonstrating it that week, how it's affecting your interactions with clients, with the team. So we make time for conversation and dialogue, but most of the day it's like, I have a women of color led team. So they're moms and they're doctors or PhD candidates, and they're, so they're doing a lot. And so not having them write everything out seems to work well for the team that we are right now. It's just like, hey, I'm in the car right now. I'm in the drop off line. And we're also pretty, one of our values has to do with us being accountability is our way to communicate, right? So if you are having a rough week, or your kids are having a rough week, or you and your spouse are just not on the same page this week, whatever the life things are, I feel for our team, we've created the space to have those moments of like, today is just off, today's Freaky Friday, whatever. And I feel like my team has established enough trust that we can just say like the life things are happening. And so we've been as far as our clients, we've been working on helping them bring that dynamic to their leadership space, because for us, personal leadership is much more powerful than like just getting the things done. And for the organizations we work with, a lot of times the leaders are so busy just doing that being is a lot harder. So talking about the things that we talk about can be a quite shocking experience or a floundering experience for people who are used to being on. And so I think for us, our icebreakers, the way we bring them into teams, the resource gifts that we, tools that we give them, our coaching exercises, we try to make things that are like in a limited number of words or in a picture, or like very creative, different part of your brain activities. That's what we've been doing since COVID, because we spend so much on the screen. And so that we've had a lot more of breaking our traditional style of training. When you talk about types of courses, we've been challenged with breaking them down to more nano, micro learnings that you could do self-paced, but holding people accountable to like, you have an assigned partner that you need to talk about this with. And if you don't, you're going to show up to class and look crazy and look foolish because you don't know what we're all talking about. And so there's some personal accountability, but we focus also, like you mentioned, on a community-driven aspect. And what we found in organizations that for years were like, wow, I've worked with you for 5 years and I didn't know any of this about you. That's been a key way that we've seen leadership development being more fruitful in the past couple of years, especially now people going back to work, is what does it mean to bring yourself to work, and having the space to do that.
Oh my gosh, speaking of learning, I love memes, and there's nothing like a generational meme that like I get and think it's funny, and then my like brand new hires are like, I don't get it. And then vice versa, right? Like they'll post something with something like from their generation, and I'm like, I don't get it. And so it's fun how like they're funny, and yet they also spark that conversation around like, tell me why this is supposed to be funny, and like,
Yeah.
having
Yeah.
that dialogue with each other too. So like I'm learning in that way as well, just across generation through memes. And so like I had one of my kids, like kids, one of my new hires, they're not kids. But like, like post a meme, and I'm sending a message in the back end going, I need you to explain this to me. And they posted a meme that was like the same thing, but like from, Friends or something. And I was like, I got it now. Okay, cool. Thanks.
I'm speaking your language.
They
Yeah,
translated for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to interpret each other, because sometimes I'm not on TikTok. I know I should be. I'm already a YouTube junkie, and so I don't want to give myself the doom stroll. I don't want to open myself up to it. But when I get YouTube shorts, I post them. So it'll be like, I was this many days old when I found out. Like, I'm like, this is how my morning is going today. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, we talked about things like VHS, like we'll have like technology, things like, y'all remember like party lines? And then the newer folks are like, what is that? So it's those kind of moments I definitely get it.
On this topic, I think there's an interesting point though that I'd be curious to learn your thoughts. Denisha, you brought up this point of like connecting when works for you. So some of our team members are busy moms, or just we've got family life, we got personal life, we got things that are going on that are impacting our ability to work during perhaps maybe traditional business hours. And sometimes that may mean that we're sending a meme or sending a message during a maybe non-traditional business hour. Maybe I put my kids to bed and then I work from like 10 p.m. to midnight or something like that. And that could be a very real working time for me. But then all of a sudden, if my colleague receives this message at 11 o'clock at night, is there potentially the fear that they see that message, or like, oh my gosh, am I supposed to be working right now? Like, oh geez, oh crud, like do I need to, like I was working from like 8 to 6 or whatever, 8 to 5, and like I shut off right after that, and now I see that message and I'm panicked. And I think as leaders, we recognize like, no, just because I'm working at this time doesn't mean you should be. I'm not expecting an immediate response, but just by the nature of hierarchies and the fact that we respect those that are in leadership positions, it's difficult to overcome that. Does that make any sense? So I guess, how do you overcome that? How do you communicate, or how do you just maybe even schedule a message that like you created at 11 p.m. but it goes to them at 7 a.m. the next morning or something like that? How do you go about combating maybe that fear that someone may feel when they're a junior person, they're getting a message from a senior person at a late time?
Can I take this?
Yo, yeah, this is for everybody. Yeah.
Well, I have
Strong feelings.
I have an email signature that says like, I respect flexible work hours. Just because I'm working now doesn't mean you need to. It's like literally below my signature. I also tell my people, I'm like, listen, I'm an executive. I work more. That's part of my job. I mean, that's part of the role, right? Like that's part of what I signed up for. I don't expect that for you. And then I'm like, I highly recommend you guys mute your notifications between whatever hours, because it is very cumbersome to delay send on everything. And I think there might be settings where I could just do that. Maybe I should probably get like a Gen Zer to help me with that, maybe. But that's just, I think it's just clear communication. It's like, hey, I don't expect this. So.
But sometimes we could say that, and we say that, but what they hear is something not that. They're like, yeah, you say I shouldn't work at 11 p.m., but they're invariably responding to our 11 p.m. messages, and you're like, go to sleep, go have fun, go do your thing. Like, don't talk back to me.
Yeah, I will say for me, because that's one of wellness is also one of our values. And so my team has been invited to hold me accountable to that. So even as you know, Garrett, I just took a trip for my birthday, and my team was using Slack, but the message was, do not answer this. You should not even be seeing this because you're not supposed to be on Slack. So like they also will say, have a full conversation even about me while I'm not supposed to be on there, knowing I'll see it later, right? So I think quarterly we check in on scheduling, because we know with kid events, life events some things are seasonal, and so we have our operational people who are over, anyone who's managing people do these scheduling check-ins every quarter, to see like how are we doing on this type of time, work hours, because we do have some people on our team who are more in part-time roles. We have contractors that we work with and vendors. So for us, just from managing projects, we try to, even with our partners and our affiliates, we check in every quarter. So we do that with our team. We also do that with our clients because we have standing meetings with them. But when we notice there's constantly like changing, or we know like budgets coming up, or we know they're still waiting to get their budgets approved, right? So we try to talk about time and boundaries around that as much as possible. For us, we have like our hours of operation that we're available to clients, and then we have our hours of operation for when we're available to each other. And so we try to manage those two schedules in a way that my team, one, I'm not modeling stressful, stress, anxiety driven behaviors for them, but then also that even for myself, when I'm in my go and I have to step back and be culturally humble, be like, you know what, actually, these are the things that they've already communicated going on. So I need to slow down, or I need to adjust. Is this, urgent and important? Is it just important? Is it just urgent? Or does this feel like something I just really want to get done? Right. And so I have to also model that, and have those conversations, whether it's verbal or not.
Yeah, I think that modeling thing is so important because I think there's two things in the modeling. One, it's showing it's okay for you to say no in certain time periods. So I had a leader that I worked with that we were trying to schedule a meeting in like 4 different time zones, trying to find the right time where we're all available doesn't always work. And, one of the leaders was like, that's during dinner time with my family. Is this meeting more important than that? And, unanimous no on the call, but what a great way to model that no behavior. Like, I can be available for you if it is urgent, but otherwise I'm going to have dinner with my family. And, for us to all be like, yeah, go have dinner with your family. It's not that urgent. Was a great way to model just that like boundary setting. But then the other thing I think that does too is as we model that behavior, I think that signals to people who are thinking about leadership in their future, like, oh, just because I can become a leader and still have boundaries. I don't have to be available all the time, even though it might look like sometimes you are. Clearly you're not, because you set this boundary in this call that I was on. So I think it also just, it gives that pathway of like, I can still do the boundaries I've got now. As I grow up, maybe they're going to look different in my, as I grow up in my career, maybe they're going to look a little different, but leadership is not like opening myself up to be available all the time.
Yeah. I block dinners on my calendar and like all of my kids' events and everything. And I have it open to where anyone can see like, hey, it's Taco Tuesday. They're like, do you do that every Tuesday? I was like, yes. We
I love
or
that.
like kids game or whatever. I'm like, just so you know, exactly like you were saying, is it more important than me watching my kids game? And people are like, oh no. I'm like, exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Like, there's been a lot of noise about the quiet quitting, like just go and like nobody will notice. And I'm like, I loud quit. I'm like, I'm going, I'm taking, my kid to this, my kid's in the play, like ask me about it tomorrow. They've got a tennis match, like, just to show that and really just be open about that. Like, there are things that happen in my life that don't happen in this building and I leave this building to go make them happen. And it's part of this. And I have a very full and whole life. They don't just wheel me out for stuff like this. And making that visible and loud so that people can see some of those boundaries that I'm setting too. Like, I'm leaving now so that I can go and pick up my kid. I'm leaving now so that I can go do this thing outside here. No, I'm saying no to that. I can get that to you tomorrow because today I'm done for the day because I've got other stuff in my life.
Exactly.
Well, and I think that's probably applicable to other, like a lot of things beyond just work-life balance. I'm even envisioning tasks. Sometimes as leaders, we'll load stuff onto our team members' plates and we're like, whenever you get the time to do it, there's no rush on this sort of thing, but like, this is something that I would like to see done. But as a leader, we may not, we know what's on their plate, but we may not be fully conscientious of what order it falls into. And so, I mean, I love the way that you framed it was, hey, this is fine that you assign me this task, but does this slot above this task? If no, I'm going to get to it later. And it might be in 2 weeks from now. And it's like, great expectation setting. That's amazing. But I think sometimes as leaders, we need to be conscientious of employees that might not feel the confidence or comfort with actually saying that to us. And might feel like they're just holding it on their chest and like, oh, geez, I've got to, get this done and get that done. Now I'm working on the weekends. And as a leader, you're like, no, don't do that. That's not that big of a rush. I just like in the next month, I don't care when, this is the next task of things, but we didn't do a good enough job of communicating that. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's really applicable. And I like the way that you put that, Kris, of like, hey, is this meeting more important than dinner with my family? Because there might be a meeting where it's like, we're on like DEFCON 9 and we're like, really, this is important. Like, you have to miss this meeting with your family. It's like, okay, fine. I'll miss this meeting with my family because this is a very, very, very important meeting. But hopefully this is something that happens very, very, very infrequently.
I would like to add to that. I think it's interesting because as I am evolving as an entrepreneur, and there's just multiple things that I'm into, my team is aware of my vision. And so that also has been helpful. It's an ongoing challenge of the vulnerability thing. But I try to make it clear as often as possible that like my goal is to do this, or I want to replace myself in the organization. I want you all to have more ownership, and like letting them know the vision of things. And I have been pleasantly surprised of hearing back from them the way that they're taking ownership of the vision, and their support for like me doing more thought leadership work and not as much of consulting for our company, bringing in using our partners more strategically. And it's been quite a journey for me as a personal leader to be my personal leadership journey, and as an entrepreneur to realize like hustling and grinding is not congruent with the type of life that I want. It's not congruent with the team that I have and the impact we want to have in the world. And so I think because of our culture as an organization and our vision, those kinds of conversations may be easier for us to navigate, because we spend a lot even with our clients, like, are you making value-based decisions in your business strategy, how you manage people, right? And so for us, we have those, I feel like we've fostered enough trust where people can just be like, I know you really love this, but I don't think it's more important than this thing. Can you kind of explain to me? And I feel like my team has become more comfortable. I wouldn't even see it as challenging or pushing back, but just having dialogue, right? And not leaving it up to, as my spouse will say, without communication, there's imagination. So there's not, take that however, life and relationship management. But when you don't talk about things, people create these stories and they operate in those stories. So for us, I think the work that we want to do in organizations is also to disrupt this narrative of like, you have to do more. And for the groups that we work with, for the groups we advocate for, particularly those who come from those historically excluded groups, doing more has always been the way. So whether it was by gender, by sector, and this narrative of I have to be 3 times better when you're already enough. So we're trying to heal that in ourselves as an organization, as we also bring that, actualize that restoring of people in the organizations that we go into. And so for us, we have to hold ourselves accountable to what we're asking other people to do. So I think even when it comes to like when you were saying like we say one thing, but what they believe, to me, that's also an indicator of like, are we in alignment, right? Is there enough trust? Is there psychological safety here that if I'm saying something, but my team doesn't really believe that I mean that, that's for me in the work we do, at least, that's an indicator of like, oh, let's do some exploring around how psychologically safe is it here. Is my word my bond? Like, do people really believe that? Yeah.
I love how I'm going to bring it back to education just for a second, because I love that thought that like modeling my word is my bond and creating a safe space, because I find often, you know, we want people to learn, we want them to grow, and we have all these things that they can learn from. But then we put all this stuff on their plate. And like, you told me learning was important, but you put all this stuff on my plate. And I can either do all the stuff on my plate or I can learn and grow. Which is it? And I'd say like inviting them to the conversation about like what's reasonable, right? Like, how do I, you know, can you carve out 30 minutes? And if you can carve out 30, you know, if we can work together, we can carve out 30 minutes, what training is going to be most effective in that 30 minutes for you to do? And okay, cool. If we can carve out an hour, you know, what's going to be most efficient, and how do we, I'm like, the word invitation is just stuck here, like inviting them to the conversation about reasonableness. Like how do we balance your plate such that you are able to take advantage of all of these educational opportunities? How can I help you pick the right one so that, you know, I'm not suddenly giving you all this extra work and asking you to do, you know, the night shift to learn this thing, when the night shift is for resting, or the night shift is for, you know, your latest Netflix binge. The night shift is not for me, right? Like the night shift is for you. And how do we invite people to that conversation?
Yeah, I would just to grow on that, like I'm doing a big organizational transformation right now. And for me, just like Denisha, like you were saying, it's been very hard for me to like, I'm doing a lot of strategic work. I cannot be like tactical day in and day out. And so, and then for my team, like getting them all envisioned, it was doing exactly like you were saying, Kris, is like, hey, this week, I want you guys to take some time and think about how you can align what you have been doing in the past with the direction we're going. Do this coursework. Like, don't feel like you have to move a mountain this week. Like, really take some time. And then it's the same thing for me, and having to be vulnerable and saying like, I had all these big objectives and I'm used to like blocking and tackling daily, but it's going to take longer than I thought. And being vulnerable and being honest, and then like coming to my team and saying, hey, these are the big things that I'm working on. They're very cross-functional. I'm having to go with leadership. It's just I'm gonna need you guys to bear with me as we go, and like trust in that we're going in the same direction, and getting the feedback that like, okay, are we all bought in? Are we going directionally in the right, you know, the right way? Okay, you know, like doing the check-ins and making sure everyone feels secure and safe, and then has the time and can set boundaries and stuff. It's been very
This brings up a very relevant and interesting point. So Kris, earlier when you were speaking, you mentioned that you set aside 30-minute office hours every week. And that is a fascinating topic, because there's a lot of companies that are like, oh, I've got open office hours. You can jump into my office whenever you want to. But that seems like that would fly square in the face of you getting your own things done. So I love to just kind of open up just briefly the debate between open office hours. I got an open door policy, step on in, interrupt me whenever you want to, versus open office hours during specific times. By the way, I love open office. I like having office hours on a set designated time, compared to open office hours. Anyone can interrupt me whenever they want to. But I love to just, what are your thoughts on this topic?
Like, I mean, I'm over meetinged and over scheduled. So, you know, like there are days when I have, you know, 8 to 5 solid meetings, including working lunches, which is so not fun. But like, if I don't schedule that office hours, my door would never be open because I'm always in a meeting. And so the concept of having an open office, where the door could be open, is a little bit foreign, I think, especially, well, and actually I heard the statistic today as I was driving. We have, based on a study of Teams users in the last like 3 years, the number of meetings has doubled or tripled. And, you know, the amount of time people are spending in meetings. So those meetings have gotten longer as well. And I don't think I'm not immune. So in order to combat some of that, you know, I put this open office hours so like people know this is when my door is going to be open. Now it's not a one-on-one, it's a public forum. So, you know, they're still encouraged, if they need a more private conversation, to put time on my calendar directly for them. But at least during this period, they know they can come and ask, or just hang, or hear what other people are asking or whatever. And it's made a difference in what I was talking about, in building that community and having that connectedness.
Any other thoughts on that topic of 30-minute office hours versus, or just like a set office hour time versus open, anyone can jump in whenever they want to?
I think for myself, one of the things that have helped me is delegating these office hours. So really leaning on some of the other leaders and aspirational leaders, in the sense of they've led in a different way and now they want to be challenged in another way. And so part of it has been like, hey, I don't need to be the go-to person. Like, I want you to bring me in at this point and at this point. And any time between that, you ping me, you Slack me, you go through this. And even though we're small, some people, it's like, you're so small, you should be able to have open doors. I said, what I don't want to do is what we say with our clients. I don't want to create a codependency on me. I want them to be able to have their own voice and take risk and, troubleshoot. And it's something, and we use that value-based thing, right? So it's like, if that's the checkpoint of like, do I need to get a yes from Denisha on this, right? It's like, have I got the things I need? Does this align with the vision? Something that'll help them take some ownership, and then also use someone else on our team. So that feeds into our collaboration value, right? Of like, it doesn't always have to be directly straight up, similar to what you do, horizontal mentoring, right? There's other people, your peers, that could help. So for us, I have these small, I guess I'm not tech, but we have like scrum meetings with, I make sure I have time with every person on the team. That's like 15, 20 minutes, and anything and I also let them set the agenda for those meetings. And so anything that's outside of that, if it's urgent, we use Slack. If it's something I need to read from a client, they use email. So we have these we give like an hour window for correspondence and things like that. But I try to have even the same with my clients of, these are the hours blocked out for client calls. These are the hours that are blocked out for like inquiries and follow-ups on sales if you need me, things like that. Because I can get off task very fast, wanting to do all the things. So delegating, and then just letting others set what's important for the time that we use has been helpful for me in the past 2 years, for sure.
I would add to that too. Like, you're talking about delegating. I think part of that is like getting away from perfectionism, which has been a struggle most of my life. I've given my team the freedom to fail. Like, I'm gonna give it a try. Like, we're not, what do I say, rocket surgery? Like, nobody's gonna die, right? Like, nobody's gonna die. So like, give it a try. Most of our, like, for us, like, calls, they're recorded, and we have really good team dynamics. We do lessons learned every week. So you can bring it back and share, like, let us know what didn't work. Try it. That's like the best way to make progress, is by like stepping up and trying something new. It could be fantastic or it could suck. Either way, we'll learn.
Love that.
So let's dive into the final question that I'd love to ask you all, and that is, what is a popularly held belief about leadership that you disagree with? Now, when I ask this question, I want to challenge you. I don't want to hear a belief that everybody, for the most part, would agree with. Like, I want a popularly held belief. Over 50% of the leadership population would say, I agree with this. And you're like, I don't agree with this. And here's why. Does anybody want to kick us off with that?
I'll go if you guys won't. I mean, we've all been talking about it, but I think like a common, you would say 50%, would say like, you're supposed to keep your personal, like your professional life and your work life separate. And one of the things that the three of us have been talking about, it seems like we all disagree with that. So maybe that's not the best one, but I think that's like a pretty common practice, especially maybe like a lot of men or like the older generations, like they try to separate like work from their personal lives. And I find that the opposite actually makes me a better leader, like being very vulnerable with my personal struggles, like not to get into the mud, but like, hey, my grandpa's dying right now, and that's really dragging me down. Or I've got kids that are going through this on top of my work stuff, and being vulnerable and open and like sharing my life, I feel like makes me a much more empathetic and deep leader, because we all have personal lives and sometimes they affect our ability to do our jobs. So
That's cool. That's a good one. I
I
like
agree.
it. Yeah. You staked the
I
claim
agree.
first. So that's no, that's a
I
good one.
know, but we're supposed to have discourse here,
No,
but then
this
I'm
is
like,
good.
okay, we're all.
No, that's fair. Yeah, no, I mean, I think yeah, I would agree that most people would agree to separate personal life from professional life. Personally, I think that yeah, I'd agree that it's good to bring them together. I think it also is dependent on like the frequency and the amount that you like share in terms of that. Like if every day it's like almost like a catastrophic an event in somebody's world, you're like it becomes it's like the boy who cried wolf. You become like numb to the news. You're like, cool, it sounds like your dog ate another pair of underwear again. Like, I guess your dog's had like 15 surgeries over the last 3 months. By the way, that's what my dog's going through right now.
Oh.
So but
Yeah, I could see that where that could really like drag down a team into the mire, into like the muck and everything. But I do find it's like very beneficial to be human. And I think COVID kind of changed us as well because we were all at home. And so like the separation that was there in the past may not, it's not as much there as it was before.
Yeah. All right. Kris, how about you? What's a popularly held belief about leadership that you disagree with?
That we have all of our stuff together. My favorite compliment these days, honestly, is to have somebody be like, "Oh, you don't look like a managing director," and I want to like thank them and give them a big hug and be like, "Excellent," because I think for so long there's this view of like when you hit leadership, like you wear the right clothes and you have the right hair and whatever right means to you, right? Like whether it's your traditional and this is going to age me, but like the old IBM view of like, the blue power suit and the white collared shirt. And, that's what leaders look like. And they don't have, emotional extremes. They have, they've got this, really high emotional regulation and they always have the right answers. Like, and so this like buttoned up, I'm like, like Barbie doll view of like perfection for leaders is, and I think a lot of us probably have gone through the trainings that have taught us to do this, right? Like this is the professional etiquette and what you look like, and here's how you express your emotions properly, and here's how like right to make us fit into this leader view so that when someone looks at us, they're like, oh, that's a leader. That's what they look like. They look like all the other things. And I will actually say, like, I didn't think I wanted to be a leader because I kept getting all the training that said you had to do this and had to be that. And I was like, that's not the kind of leader I want to be. And so, I maybe am purposely more messy in front of my teams than maybe they need to see all the time, just because I'm sure some of my teams like, oh my God, we get it. You're a mess. Like, it's fine. Like, move on. But I really would like to have a view for people that shows them that I don't have all of my stuff together and I don't have to be perfect. And I am still here, able to make decisions, able to get the right people on the bus, able to keep things moving forward, learn from my mistakes and grow, and really even admit publicly, man, I screwed that thing up, y'all. Let's talk about it and let's figure out what I can do differently, so that there's a different model for what a leader looks like. So hopefully I would love in the future for no one to be surprised that anybody in particular is a leader because they don't look like a leader, because there's so many different leaders, and we aren't all going to look like each other, and that the training to make us all look the same is outdated and needs to change, because we're different and we're messy and don't have it all together.
I love that. Just to bring up the contrarian point of view on that, the counter to that is, what happens if we're in a scenario where our team feels like they are not confident that we're going to deliver for them and be the leader they want to see in us, because maybe they don't feel like we've got our stuff together. Like they feel like, hey, I don't know if my leader's got my back, or if we're going to get to where we need to be because they're not dressed in a 3-piece suit or whatever. I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to bring up the contrarian perspective. Yeah. I totally agree with you. The reason why this is a popular held belief is because, a lot of people think I need to be dressed up, I need to be buttoned up, there should be zero vulnerability about anything that I do, because I want my people to be confident that I'm going to deliver for them and have their backs for whatever scenario we're in. So anyways, that's I think the contrarian view on that topic, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I'm not the leader for everybody, right? Like, I think we have to be, you know, what's that statement? I'm not a taco, I can't please everybody. But you know, so if somebody needs somebody that looks like what I described before, you know, they should go find that, and that's great. That'll work well for them. But I regularly tell my team, I'm like, if I'm the only person making decisions, if I'm the only person who is quote unquote leading, we will fail. Yep. So, you know, because I'm not perfect and I'm not going to do it all right. And so, like, I will support your decisions. I will support your growth. I will be here. We will figure this out together. Because I can't do the other. So you can be contrarian all you want, Garrett.
No, I mean, that's my job. I have to be the contrarian here. I have to find, like, okay, why is this a popularly held belief? Why do you disagree with it?
Yeah.
You know, I got to bring it up because, you know, people are watching this and they're like, okay, cool, I get it, but can we bring up the alternative side of this, and can we see what the rebuttal is? You know, I mean,
certainly go watch television. There is a stereotype you will see in all the leaders there. In what they wear and how they dress and how they approach, like, you will see it. And you know, there's a reason it's popular.
Totally. Right. It's that sociopathic CEO vibe, like no emotional attachment. But I think I'd rather have a messy leader who's not going to throw me under the bus.
Yeah. Ooh, these are really good. I don't know if they're not controversial enough for me to say no. So for me, I would say just because of the work that I do, which is a lot of equity focused, inclusion driven work. So for me, I would say, I don't know if it's 50%, but that leaders are not the only heroes in an organization. And so, and I think that has a lot to do with power dynamics, because we spend a lot of time talking about power. And even for myself as a Black woman in America, that I've also, in my process or my journey of leadership, is also what we call reclaiming my voice. I wouldn't say taking back power per se, but reclaiming my voice and figure out how I want to wield my power. And so oftentimes when we go into organizations, there's a dynamic of leadership isn't doing this and leadership doesn't get it, and right, and those things are important, but then there's also, it can't just sit at a top level, right? I come from more of a grassroots background, and so when it comes to leading, just that those who are in different sections, pockets of the organization are leading in cool ways every day, but a lot of organizations are not doing their own internal, you know, best practice or research study to figure out, like, yeah, the economy is sucking. Eggs are way too expensive. You know, things like your kids want to do everything and they're talking about stuff you have no idea what they're talking about. Like, there are people in your organizations who get this and still have the capacity or still have the innovation and insight to still make work fun for people. There's still places in your organization where there's levity. There's still places in your organization where an idea can get generated and everyone just hops on. And a lot of times people think it's only going to happen at that peak top position. So while we target those key decision makers, one of the things we're helping them understand is power. Like, sometimes having more power makes it harder to use it when you aren't surrounded around people with diverse perspectives and you're not being challenged. So, you know, too much is given, much is required. So they can't be the only heroes in the organization. And sometimes leaders are the ones bringing the resistance, you know, those formal positions, and you need all of these other hero stories in the organization to really point you in the right direction, or even execute it sometimes. Because a lot of times, I think even the way we talk about structures and layers in an organization feed a hero story, right? So it's like, oh, entry level and senior, you know, and sometimes that is exasperated by some of those diversity markers like age, right? Someone being like, wait, you're a 27-year-old CEO, you know, things like that. And you're just like, well, it's possible, right? Now, there's all kinds of things that are possible. A board of directors, right? And so some of the language that we use, I think, around things like hero stories and organizations, like sometimes it leaves out the people who have different types of power, who've been key to change happening, or like you're saying, transformation within an organization. So I don't know if that's like a one straight answer, but they're kind of combined, right? So like hero stories and power, formal leader positions are not the only heroes in an organization.
I love that. But I would imagine that, like, to even extrapolate that, when a leader assumes the hero position, it becomes ingrained that no one else is capable of being in that hero position because they've taken on the hero role for so long. They're like, well, no one's capable. No one's got the education or the intelligence or the moxie or whatever it may be to step up and be the hero in the scenario. And the reason why is because they've never had the opportunity. And so when that leader takes it, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy that they're the only ones who can be the hero in a scenario, which, yeah, I totally, and I think that happens all the time. I mean, yeah, we see a lot of leaders who, think their people are incapable of certain things because they've never had the opportunity to do it. And so they were the ones who always have to do it. And they've enabled themselves to have that mentality about that.
Which is why I think coaching is cool. Like, I think coaching and training have to go together, because when we talk about learning paths, because I feel for myself, I respond well to coaches that acknowledge my expertise and skill set and don't come from that hero position, right? Of like, I'm going to help fix your life. I love it. Y'all want to fix my life, by the way, but I'm just saying the show. But in that perspective of like, where it creates more doubt, or it feeds like this conversation around imposter positioning, so I think for leaders, you have to be mindful of like, because I look at systems, how does our infrastructure create these very particular hero positions and ideologies that are very difficult for those who already are dealing with structural exclusion to be able to just jump in and shine, right? Because a lot of organizations we go to, there's not a real formal succession plan. There's not a real formal way of what does leadership look like where I have more power or I can have more impact, and so that can kind of feed, like you said, them own self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, well, there's not a lot of people with this kind of expertise from those backgrounds, versus looking at it of reimagining what we do of what would it look like, right? What would be our role in creating a road path or a ladder that extends in multiple ways for lots of heroes and leaders to show up within our organization that we can leverage to push us forward, and not just one person.
Well, I know we are at time. This has been sweet. This has been a great pre-symposium panel. What a great conversation. I think we've had some incredible points about how we can develop our employees during these uncertain times, and then just dive into different leadership topics about what we can do to be the best leaders we can be for our team, as well as dive into what are popularly held beliefs about leadership that we disagree with. So Elizabeth, Kris, Denisha, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time. If you are a leader and you're watching this and you're thinking to yourself, I want to meet these three, or you want to come and meet other leaders just like these three, come to our Executive Symposium on March 30th. It'll be held at Accenture from 5 to 8 p.m. Topic is how to develop employees and retain outstanding performers during a recession. If you're interested in getting the RSVP link, learning more about it, please send us a direct message. We'll also have a RSVP link in the chat to this, in the comments to this video. But thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Elizabeth, Kris, Denisha, you were amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.